Welcome to another episode of The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes, the storytelling show that features The Clearing, where all good questions come to get asked and all good stories come to be told. And where all my guests have two things in common. They're all creative individuals and all with an interesting story to tell. There are some lovely storytelling metaphors, a clearing, a tree, a juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's all to play for. So yes, welcome to The Good Listening To Show, your life and times with me, Chris Grimes. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome your host for this evening's performance of The Good Listening To Show, broadcasting live from Lost and Grounded Brewers in Bristol, Mr. Chris Grimes. Oh no, keep going. Oh, keep going. And stop. Wonderful. You're just too kind. So welcome to the show. I'm Chris Grimes, and welcome to Lost and Grounded Brewers, where we're broadcasting live across the interweb as well. And this is a very special series strand to The Good Listening To Show called Best of Bristol, Bristol Voices, where I'm here to help promote and amplify all the best of all the creative endeavours that are in our home city and community of Bristol. Hurrah! So thank you for coming live, and I speak Ute, and thanks to my daughter, I know what the acronym IRL is. Do you all know that? We're all here IRL, which is in real life. Thanks very much, and that's the main thing. So let's get going. Would you please welcome my very special guest, all the way from standing next to the bar in the brew house of his dreams, because this is his gaff. Would you please welcome the co-founder of Lost and Grounded Brewers, purveyors of fine lagers and speciality ales, Mr. Alex Troncoso. Marvellous.
Oh, we have water here.
What a lovely entrance, and hello. Welcome to your own show.
Oh, thank you.
Take a seat. Lovely. And thank you for furnishing me with a clear head, which actually is part of Bristol Brewery's endeavour.
Yeah. I mean, we've stocked that here for quite a while now,
Yes.
because we don't make alcohol-free beer, and we know the guys there. They often actually buy some of the venues that they have always supported us, and it's kind of nice just to have their beer here as well.
Yes,
So,
and that lovely sort of mutual support of all the
Yeah.
breweries, and it's a big scene in Bristol now. Just
Yeah.
excuse me while I pour this for myself. Slight pause as man pauses a bit. It's like a commercial break. Thank you very much while I pour this. So welcome to the show. This is the show in which I invite movers, and I pause for motorbikes as they go past as well. I don't know if you heard that. I invite movers, makers, shakers, mavericks, influencers, and also personal heroes into a clearing or serious happy place of my guests'
Am I
choosing.
your hero, am I?
You are. Because, I mean, this is, who said I couldn't organise a piss-up in a brewery? Here we are, we're doing one, and I'm on a bit of a trailblaze to curate free beer, free show events, because it's just a wonderful thing to come along to.
Yeah.
But also I'm really, really excited to find the story behind the story of Alex Troncoso. I'm going to let you in a moment. I'm just going to blow a bit of happy smoke at you.
Yep.
When I really enjoyed researching you before today, did you know that if you Google Alex Troncoso, up comes a Chilean padre? Which, have you noticed that before?
I haven't.
So there is another one who's not going to be coming on tonight,
Yeah.
a Chilean padre. I actually got a bit lost watching a video about him, which had nothing to do with the wonderment that you have created.
Well, my father was Chilean.
Oh, was he?
There you go, yeah.
And so the name Troncoso, let's get going with that. Everyone might expect it's Chilean or Italian, sounds a bit Troncoso, but of course we all know, or I know, that you're not from there. So where does Troncoso come from?
So it's a Spanish name from Galicia. So there's actually a little village called Troncoso in Galicia, and then I guess a lot of people at some point migrated from there to South America, so to Chile, where half my family is from.
Yeah.
It's funny, when we had an event here the other week, I don't know many Troncosos, and there was a vet here from Spain, and she said, oh, actually, my grandmother's a Troncoso. So that was,
Okay.
yeah, quite
So you haven't met many Troncosos, but you're hearing of them.
Yeah, yep, so.
Wonderful. And so you're from Australia originally. I know you moved over here. You were lost, and then you found, and then now you've grounded here in Bristol.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're a brewer of old, but in search of a brewery. What made you decide to base yourself here in Bristol?
So, so the story goes, So, well, I actually was originally, well, I was born in Guatemala. My old man was working there, and then I grew up part of my life in the US. When I was 16, moved to Australia, did high school there, went back to the US, did my degree. After my degree, went back to Australia, worked in Tasmania. That's where my partner's from, who's also co-founder of the brewery. And then we lived in Tassie, Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, Brussels, back to Australia to Perth, then back to Melbourne, then to London, and then we're on the way to Cornwall one day for a weekend away, and then we were driving, and I looked on the map, and it's like, oh, it's a bit, you don't know what the traffic's like here, you know, so it could be a bit far. So we kind of looked at the map, and a friend of ours in Melbourne used to live in Bristol. He said, oh, it's really cool, you should check it out. So we actually came, and then it kind of felt like freedom. I remember we were at a pub, and Annie says to me, can you hear that? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, everyone's laughing. So, and it was something like, you know, I mean, we love London as well, but it was something like, there seemed to be something a little bit more, felt a little bit more like home here. So we came back a bunch of times, and then eventually we decided, well, what if we got new visas, because I was sponsored at Camden, so what if we got new visas? What if we found a place to live? What if we found the extra investment? What if we found a place to build a brewery? And then, yeah, we did it. We pulled it off. So,
But you were working in London at the time with Camden Brewery.
Yeah.
And your brewing prowess goes way back to home brewing in the early 2000s, I was reading.
Yeah, 1993, actually. So 32 years. There you go.
And you mentioned Annie. This is Annie Clements, who is your co-founder.
Yep.
And a husband and wife team, different surnames. So are you actually married?
No, we're not, but we've been together for almost 27 years, I think. So it's, a long time.
And I've heard that Annie is the one most responsible for naming each new beer as it comes along.
It sort of, gets, like a bit of the creative side. I mean, Annie was originally a social trainer, so for people with acquired brain injuries and that sort of thing. But she always had this thing about being a writer, because she loves literature and reading, and so now it's sort of almost like, this is almost like her story in a way. So it's her story, like everything coming out of her brain. So when we come up with a new idea, it's like, I can see her like this Women's Day one, Together Sounds Better. A lot of the women in the brewery were all involved in it. Well, actually, all the women in the brewery were involved in it.
And is that a fairly new one, Together Sounds Better?
Yeah, it was for International Women's Day, that one. So it's kind of nice. I mean, we obviously been together a long time, but we've never worked together. So then, that's, I think we sort of balance each other a little bit,
Yeah.
I guess I'm from a brewing background, so for me, not so much, a lot of this isn't that new to me, but having our own business is quite new. So.
And it is a fantastic, majestic setup here at Lost and Grounded. So what's the sort of kit you need? And just talk us through what you need to do to sort of get the beer made. So,
I mean, brewing can be quite simple. It can be like, I used to homebrew and judge in homebrew competitions. You can make amazing beer and very basic stuff. But what we have here is really focused on making lagers. So behind us here is like a beautiful German brew house. It's kind of like if you want like an amazing brewery, there's kind of about, there's about half a dozen companies around the world. Most of them are based in Germany. And then of those ones, this is kind of like one of the top ones. So it's our little like Rolls-Royce of breweries, But the reason we're called Lost and Grounded Brewers, not Lost and Grounded Beer Brewery, because it's the people that make the beer, because that's just a thing with pipes, And I say that all the time, like, without the people, this is just a shed full of stainless steel. And like hanging out in a shed full of stainless steel, like, isn't that fun? I can assure you that, because in the early days, we were selling bugger all beer, and there's only 7 of us here, and it's a very lonely place, almost like those tumbleweeds you talked about.
And when you said we were selling bugger all beer, that's not an actual brand name, is it? No, bugger all beer. So.
No, I remember the first couple of years were like extremely difficult, but we made it through, and in the end, like we started with 7 of us, now there's 35 more or less on the team.
And in terms of the timeline, how long has Lost and Grounded been founded for?
9 years. So we started planning about a year in advance. And then once we actually got everything together, we actually did it really fast. So we went from raising the final money to actually brewing beer within like 6 months. So we just kind of went for it.
And in terms of your reach, I know that you distribute nationally, a little bit internationally as well. So what's the reach now?
I mean, we've sent beer, far afield at times, like there's some in Japan at the moment. But really, our kind of aim is sell about half our beer in our radius of Bristol, and then the other half's more or less in London at the moment.
Yeah.
If you had your ideal world, you'd probably sell everything you could as close as possible. So If you look at a lot of the German family brewers that are in Bavaria, it's like they make probably 5 times the amount of beer we're making, and they sell everything within about 25 kilometers.
So
that's
and
like
it's Belgian and German beer that you got most passionate about in terms of the process and the magic that you bring.
Yeah. I mean, I had most of my career before this was at Little Creatures in Australia. So that's like a well-known pale ale brewery, and and actually at that point of my career and in my brewing kind of life, I love pale ale. It was like my #1 thing. But actually over time, I found that I got more and more fascinated with how to make lager, because it's quite difficult in a way. And that's why we first went to Camden Town Brewery when we left Australia, and then was there a few years, and then did this. And when we set this up, we just said, well, what would you do how would you make the most delicious, unique beer you could, which is like, say, Keller Pils, which I'm having here. And we have lots of equipment here that is all like little differences in processes of what we do, and all those little things actually make much bigger impact,
So we're going to get you on the open road of the structure, the curated structure now of the Good Listening To show. There's going to be a clearing, a tree, a lovely juicy storytelling exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's going to be some alchemy, some gold, a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a golden baton, and a cake. So it's all to play for.
You've said this before, eh?
I have. It's part of my patter, like you've sold beer before. And I'm so happy you've grown from bugger all beer to plenty beer, which is fantastic. So first of all, a clearing is your serious happy place. I believe we're in the brew house of your dreams, so it wouldn't surprise me if this might be it, but you're allowed to go global with this. Where would you say your serious happy place is? Where does Alex Troncoso go to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think?
Well, I was thinking about this, and probably, if I think back just recently, we're in Berlin, and we're at this beer garden, and the thing I really liked about it was like just amazing beer, but there's only like 3 to choose from. You have like your Helles, you have a Dunkel, you have a Weiss beer. That's it. So you got 1 of 3 amazing beers to drink, really simple foods, and just this amazing beer garden where like there wasn't even actually any music playing or anything, but it was just all the chatter of people and just talking, and we were just there having a beer and just thought, actually this is good. It's like, I don't want to leave. I had to leave eventually, but yeah.
So your serious happy place is a Berlinian beer garden?
Yeah, or some kind of beer garden like that, just where actually, and I do like simplicity. I mean, we make lots of different beers here, but actually 80% of what we make is lager. And I do like simplicity, and like, it's like less is more in a way. And yes. I do just, my ideal bar is almost like just going to a bar and there's just like 1 tap of beer, but it's just absolutely delicious.
Yes.
So there's no confusion then, you just have it.
And if Annie and you tuned into the laughter in Berlin, I'm hoping that Annie wasn't tempted to up sticks and everyone now go gallop and stampede towards the laughter.
Yeah, I did say, maybe we build a brewery here, but I think it was something along the lines of, are you crazy? I think that was
Are you absolutely crazy? So you're very much staying here, but I love the fact that your serious happy place is the Berlin garden. And just to put a sort of 3 words pin in a map, whereabouts in Berlin is this place?
That was the Café Nuensee. So it's basically got the Tiergarten, which is like the massive kind of park in central Berlin, and then they've got a series of lakes there, and that's one of the cafes on the
And
lake
as you've
there.
mentioned them, I can get in touch with them now and have the next show in
Yeah,
So here we are then in your clearing, and now I'm going to arrive a bit existentially with a tree in your clearing, and I'm going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out, go where you like, how you like, whenever you like into this structure. But this is where you've had 5 minutes since we met a few months ago and you signed up to doing the show, where you're going to talk about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and then the 1 is a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. Just to reassure you, it's not a memory test. I'm going to curate you through it. So first of all, can you talk about 4 things that have shaped you, Alex?
Yeah, I think, I mean, one for sure would be my partner, because I think over the years, like, and especially more recently, she's kind of like just helping me to learn to be a bit more patient, I think. And I will often just rush into things. I'll just come up with an idea and be like, da. She's like, well, hang on, I haven't even had breakfast yet. Just like, just like slow down. I think, it sort of balances me out a little bit, because I probably do get a bit obsessive, and I had a lot of years where I worked really, really hard and just like relentlessly, and I probably actually put, in retrospect, like life was just on hold for years and years and years while I just tried to build my career and all the rest of it.
So you've got a tenacity and a passion to get stuff done, but that can come at a cost, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's first. I think Second would be living overseas. I mean, my father was an immigrant. He left Chile when he was in his late 20s. He worked all around the world. He was in mining, so he worked in U.S., Guatemala, where I was born.
And what type of mining was it?
A lot of coal mining, copper, gold, different things like that. He worked in Venezuela as well. He worked in Australia for a lot of years, and he spent the last 20 years of his life in Kazakhstan, actually, so he was there.
Still following the mining path?
Yeah, still following mining. So, so I don't think he barely had a holiday in his life, so he just kind of eventually falls off the twig. But I think the one thing that he said to me once, not long before he died, he said, eventually you don't want to be different anymore. And I know what he means now, because actually starting a company is hard enough. Starting a company on the other side of the world with no support is actually really bloody hard. And then having that startup phase feed right into COVID, all the rest of it that all of us went through was kind of holy shit. And I know what he means now. It's eventually you just kind of want to go back to where you just blend in and you...
and say his quote again?
It was sometimes you just don't want to be different anymore.
Yeah.
And I think his aim was eventually move back to Chile, but he never kind of did. So I think that's sort of interesting. And I think as well, when we worked in Belgium, we lived there. I mean, we were in the lap of luxury pretty much. We had, we got relocated over by a big global brewer. We got put in an apartment. We got given a relocation allowance. We had good salaries, everything. They're going to give us, French lessons, everything. But it's still bloody hard. You think when you're somewhere on holidays and you think oh, that's sweet. Everyone speaks English, but then when you're there and you think, I got to call the power company. Oh, how hard is that? And then, that leads you to think if even people lots of expats around the world, even if you can find it difficult, how is it for a refugee?
Yes.
It's bloody impossible, if you had to deal with all that, but with no security at all.
So you had a sort of background and a DNA of wanderlust because of your dad's traversing around the planet. You sound like you've had your own wanderlust, but then you've grounded and you've found a home. And I'm hearing or feeling that you haven't got to pull back to going back to Australia or to Chile.
No, we'll eventually go back, but right now I think we've finally gone what? We've worked really hard. We have an amazing team now. It's about to start, everything's more or less running itself now, and it's sort of when we take a step back, which is probably what we didn't do enough of over time, is take a step back, and you just go wow, this is pretty cool. I think.
And are you a father as well? I didn't ask that.
No, we don't have any kids. We have a couple of cats. We've always had pets, but we don't have any kids. And it's interesting actually here now as we're growing and the team's getting older and starting to have children. It's kind of interesting to see people go through the kind of changes in their life. And
so it's becoming more of a family anyway.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I think third for me, which is kind of a more recent thing. I think, like I said, I worked really bloody hard for most of my career. And I think it was only more recently, probably the last 5 years, where I really actually realized, what I've been dealing with my whole life is having this thing of having to learn how to live with depression, which I didn't really know I had at the time. I think when I look back, I had several quite depressive episodes over time, probably linked to stress and different things, but it's definitely been a cycle. And I think the stress of doing this has definitely uncovered that. And I think I learned a lot from that process about actually how to do that. And I think it's I didn't do a lot of sports when I was young, but like the saying, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And I think, I was driving myself so hard for so long, so I did my chemical engineering degree, then I finished that, then I kind of got into brewing, then I did, while I was working, I did a diploma in brewing, and then a graduate thing in brewing, and then I did a master's in business, and and it was just going from one thing to the next, but it's almost working so hard.
So you're slingshotting onto the next thing.
Yeah, almost like you're thinking oh, I've achieved all this, so I'm great. But the problem is I learned it's if you define yourself by your achievements, what happens? If you achieve something, you feel great. What happens if you don't? You feel like shit. And it's if you actually focus more on your sense of self and your self-worth, it doesn't matter if things go right or wrong. You might feel a bit happier, you might feel a bit sad for a while, but actually on balance, you're just kind of like that. And that's been kind of quite an interesting thing to kind of uncover about myself the last few years. And it's, I think, and that's also made me slow down, because it's I was having a beer with a guy the other day, he's a German guy, and he kind of said to me, for sure, one thing's for certain, we don't live to 150. So I was like, you're right, actually. So we've worked really hard, we've got to this point, actually it's time to start enjoying it a bit more, and don't actually be so caught up in sweating the small stuff. Don't be so caught up in everything. Actually just try and enjoy it a little bit more, which is kind of like our next mission. That's what we're on now. So it's not about, we're selling beer, we're in growth, everything's great, the team's great.
You survived COVID.
Survived COVID, we're, the business is looking after itself, so it's like, now take a step back. I think that's,
So you've found an even keel and you're on more of a plateau of not sweating the small stuff. Do you feel you've got there now? I mean, obviously, it's a trial to be in business. I'm sure it's not over. But
no, I mean, it's not over, but I did say the other day, I said, I actually feel, even though I've done all these things in my career, like Little Creatures was amazing, like we built, I was in charge of building like 3 new breweries there. We went from a team of not many when I started to like, I had about 40 in production, and then, ended up being quite big. But I said to Annie the other day, I was like, actually, this is the first time in my life I felt a sense of optimism. I think I was so caught up in always worrying about what was going to happen, or what was going to be the next project, or what was going to be the next thing that I was going to do to like prove myself.
Is Annie here now?
No, she couldn't make it, but I think she might be watching at home, I think. So I think it's the first time I said, actually, I sort of feel like quite optimistic in a way and quite calm, and I don't actually know if I felt this way before. So.
Well, I'm extremely happy to be interviewing you at that point, which is lovely.
That was 3 things.
Yeah.
What's the 4th thing?
A 4th shapeage?
4th shapeage. I think, I didn't think this far ahead, but I think education actually. I mean, my father was, it's kind of funny, I think a lot more about my father now that he's not here than when he was here. And I didn't live with him for most of my life, but I think the one thing that he was big on, like he came from quite a poor background in Chile, and it was like education was the only thing that helped him get out of that.
Yeah.
Since then, I was always focused on education, and I try and encourage some of the team here, like, start thinking about what you're going to do. Like, you don't have to, and I kind of said to someone the other day, it's like, this is just my opinion. I could be full of shit. You don't have to believe me, but you might want to start thinking about what happens if you want to leave Lost and Grounded one day. What happens to you later on? Like, how are you going to navigate
plan B? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of education, and I've enjoyed it. It's kind of weird. I don't read that much, but I like reading books about things.
And do you have siblings as well? And is your mum still around?
Yeah. So mum's still alive. She's in Washington State. Have a stepmom in Australia. Have siblings all over the place. So had I think in total there's actually 8.
Last count.
Last count. There's about 8. Maybe there's some hidden
Have
around
they all
somewhere.
descended? To Lost
No,
and
there's a couple live in Kazakhstan. A couple.
Oh gosh, your dad really did.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
Yeah.
Have a sister in Chile. Got a little brother in Washington D.C. Got a sister in Hawaii. Got a couple of sisters in Seattle.
Nobody else is in the brewing game, presumably.
No.
Sure.
I mean, I was originally meant to work in petroleum refining, so it was like, that sounds fun, doesn't it?
In what, sorry?
Petroleum refining, like making petrol. That should have been my future, but this is more fun, I think.
Yes, you're brewing something more drinkable.
Exactly.
Great. So that's great. 4 shapeages. Now 3 things that inspire you, Alex Troncoso.
I like seeing people that are quite altruistic in their, vision or dream of what they want to do. Like if they're really precise in what they want to do. So like if you go, like I said about like my ideal bar that has 1 tap. It's almost like if you go to a restaurant and it has really, really like specific criteria about what it does. It's the worst thing you go in a restaurant, the menu's this big. It's like, well, you're kind of trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And that's why, like I said earlier, we don't make alcohol-free beer, and it's like, there's demand for it, but we can't be everything to everyone. So let's really just try and focus on what we do. So I think that's first. I think second, looking at some of the music industry, especially some of the stuff from around Bristol, it's quite inspiring when you see like, and I kind of talked to some people who are in music about this, how just having a band is almost like, it's just like any other business. It's like, it comes down to your management. It comes down to your creativity, your product, so your music, everything, your management, your funding, your access to the market, your promotion, all that sort of stuff. And actually, it's making beers exactly the same.
Because you need a fan base as well, obviously for the beer as well.
And it's all those things together. And it's quite interesting if you look at, say, like Idols, for instance, from Bristol, and you look at like, wow, like the way that their whole group is doing things, and that's coming down to the management and the promotion and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really inspiring. And we
it's like the machinery of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of, the funny thing, like, someone told me once I'm a bit more of like a gentleman socialist. I'm not a very good capitalist, so I'm good at making beer. I'm good at giving it away. I'm not very good at not very good at selling it.
Yes.
But fortunately, other people are good at selling it.
I haven't heard that. A gentleman socialist. That's a nice expression.
And I think, it's like the one thing that you have to learn is the hard way is actually a lot of it comes down to money. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to, like, even if you have a great idea and you have a great product, if you don't have the money, then you're kind of stuffed, And it's like having that formula of everything, like marketing, the team. And I kind of say this to people all the time. It's like, given unlimited money, like, you can build a brewery, you can make beer, you can hire a brewer, you can hire a salesperson, you can hire whatever, but you can't buy a team, really. You have to make it. And you can't buy a culture, you have to make it.
And you always need a bit of an agitation of pain in order to be creative, I think.
Yeah.
To push and survive and keep going.
Yeah, and like, and I think out of, like, as we know, like COVID, like, out of a bit of distress comes creativity, and now we're more than 4 times bigger than we were before COVID. So
that's
it's
incredibly relatable. This whole idea that I'm doing got going out of adversity during the pandemic. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't have even had this idea, but I'm still very delighted to be here now, having had that idea, but it definitely came out of pain.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you see all these different things, and it's nice to see the success that people get sometimes. And I like, I think the other thing that I like, I said about people being really precise in what they do. I think when anyone's like really, really genuine in what they do, I think it kind of shines through in the end, and that could be anything. It's like, it could be a button factory down the road, but if that person just loves buttons, they're gonna make the most wicked buttons in the world. It's like, to see that passion in people is like, quite inspiring. It's almost like you see the, see like some of the guys in Japan that have been, like either a woman or a man. They've worked in the same like ramen place for like 70 years, and they're still there. But it's just like a precision operation about what they do.
And of course, in Japan, you've got the idea of an ikigai, which is that center point in life between what the world wants, what you're good at, what it needs, and what you can get paid for. And if that's selling ramen or brewing beer or doing a podcast,
that's good. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Oh, have you not heard that ikigai? No. It is that. It's a Japanese beautiful construct, as I just explained. Has anybody else heard of ikigai? It's not just some have, some haven't.
That's wicked. Yeah.
Yes, and it's quite onomatopoeic. It sounds like it would be spelt. So.
Yeah, and it's true. It's like, when I was in my early career, I always used to think, like, when I worked in Tasmania, I worked in an iron ore mine. So, like, making, we had an iron ore mine up in the rainforest, and we slurried it up, processed it, put it in a pipeline through the rainforest, 55 miles. It popped out on the coast. It got rolled into little balls and put through these massive furnaces that were like 3 times the height of this building, making hundreds of thousands of tons a year. And I was there only for about a year or so, because I was like, I do not want to be doing this. But there was guys that worked there for like years, like decades. And I used to think to myself, like, what the hell? Like, what? How can someone do this? Like, because I would always be thinking about the next thing. But actually, I had this epiphany one day. I thought, actually, they're happy.
Yeah, yes.
So, like, they're happy doing what they're doing. They're happy.
And landing where you feel a sense of belonging is, of course, gold, really.
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest bit. And I think everywhere Annie and I've been, it's been like, where do you actually finally feel you belong? I think it's not.
So does Bristol feel like home now?
But I think part of us eventually will go back to Australia, but I don't know when. It's kind of like how long's a piece of string, but
sure.
But yeah, it's.
So I think that's 3 things that inspire you.
Yep.
Unless there's anything else you wanted to say in that regard.
No.
And now we're going to talk about, this is borrowed from the film Up. If you've all seen the film Up, there's a moment where the dog goes, oh, squirrels. So what are your 2 squirrels or monsters of distraction? I'm just revealing this picture. This is apparently what squirrels do when they see a spectacular nut.
Okay.
So they're in awe of us and what we're doing. And in fact, they're looking at the audience too. So your 2 squirrels, what are your 2 monsters of distraction, sometimes called our shiny object syndrome? So what 2 things in your life never fail to stop you in your tracks and make you go, oh, squirrels?
Yeah, I think on one side, I do love, I know nothing about art, right? But I do love like street art and actually seeing the scale of what some people have been able to create. And it was kind of funny when we did the mural on the front of the brewery here. There's a guy named Gage Graphics, and he's based in Bristol. And
This gentleman in the front row has just had a mural on his garden wall done by this very same chap.
Yeah. So it was him and his mate came and did it, and they kind of had a look, and they were like, "It's probably one of the bigger ones we've done."
Yeah.
And literally, they just did it in like 2 days. They just did it where they had like 100 cans of paint, scissor lift, and they just kind of gridded it out, and they just did it, you know. But he does amazing work. But I do love seeing that, and like I went to Chile like years ago, probably 2007, and where my father's from is Valparaiso, and there's actually amazing street art when you go up into all the hills and all the different neighborhoods, and it's quite amazing. I kind of just took photos of it all. So that's one thing. What's another thing that always catches my attention? I can't help it. Like I do love numbers, and if there's a problem, I'd love to try and
You're a mathematician at heart, then.
Well, yeah, I do. Yeah. I kind of joke because I love spreadsheets because they don't have any emotions. You can just get whatever answer. You can just go plug your numbers in and shit, we're going to be filthy rich in 10 years. But
yes.
it's year 9 now. It hasn't happened yet. But
So you love a spreadsheet. That's a great squirrel. Some would say it's quite a dull squirrel, but I
like a problem. I like trying to figure problems out.
Okay, and now it's the one which is a quirky, we can go back to the tree now if you like. So the one is a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
I was born in a place called Tenango.
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 I missed out Tenango.
They grow coffee there apparently, because I met a brewer once and he's like, oh, they have amazing coffee there, but I've been there once. They never went back again.
So this is the shout out for the Tenango Tenango coffee shop, mate. Lovely.
Yeah, I think what other things. I've talked a lot about myself already. I think
that's the idea. It's called the Good Listening To Show.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to talk about yourself. Okay, so we've shaken your tree. Hurrah! Now we stay in your clearing, which is still in the Berlin Beer Garden, and now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. So when you're at purpose and in flow, what are you absolutely happiest doing? And this could be your ikigai. What are you here to reveal to the world? What are you absolutely happiest doing?
Even though I don't do much anymore, well, actually, I love seeing the crew do good. So I love seeing us, we've done all this, and once upon a time I knew how it all worked, but it's like I'm way out of the loop now. It's like I'm miles out. I've been put out to pasture, So it's, but I love the team, seeing the team do well, and I love seeing some of the crew doing things that I did, however many years ago now, and the brewery breakdown, the troubleshooting, everything. They just figure stuff out and get on with it. And
you call your squad the crew, then? Is that
well? Yeah, crew. It could be team, whatever,
Yeah.
But it's and I love seeing the the basics of just malt and hops and water, just
So you still love the chemistry.
Stick a bit of yeast in, and just the art of how do you. There's actually a saying in a book, in a home brewing book by a guy named Charlie Papazian, and it says brewing's where art meets beer, art meets science and has a beer, and it's kind of you have all this history.
So say that again. Brewing is where art meets science and has a beer.
Yeah,
lovely.
And it's you have all the science of it. I love all the history of it as well, and then you combine it, when you go to some of the traditional family breweries in Germany and just see they have technology like this, but they just use it just to make this delicious, beautiful, simple thing. Our whole mission was how do you make, a really simple, delicious beer just using old-fashioned ingredients.
Of itself, that's alchemy brewing into gold.
Yeah.
Which is a lovely answer.
And also when we often do it now with tours, because we have a lot of production going on, and at any one time you can typically taste. Let's say Keller Pills at 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, 4 weeks old, all in the tanks, and you can actually see the impact that lagering does to something, because the lager, in a lot of ways, is just a word to people.
And that's the real signature brew for you, the Keller Pills, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what is the difference, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, I kind of explain to people, most industrial lager, not all of it, but a lot of it is made as quick as possible because it's an economics thing.
Yeah.
So it's sort of 10 days, whatever, so in and out. But when you're making beautiful lager, it's it's kind of like the process of aging champagne and lees. So when the champagne's in the bottle with the yeast and it's maturing, that yeast is doing something. It's helping the palate round out. It's doing all these little
Yeah.
things. And actually lagering properly is like doing that. And I kind of say to people, the analogy is if you go into a factory that's making white bread, you get that white bread, it could be whatever brand. You can make a sandwich, you can make toast, it's fine, you eat it. But you go into the local sourdough bakery, that's also making white bread. But it actually has texture, it has been made by hands, been made by people, and it also makes toast in a sandwich. But they're completely different things. But they're both white bread, you know?
Made with passion and with love.
Yeah,
and with the right yeast.
and it's like that with lager. You got lager, this industrial commodity, or you have lager, this beautiful kind of thing.
So I remember the German brewed Castlemaine 4X back in the day, which must be completely whereas that's a bit of a
Yeah,
further.
because I went to school in Brisbane actually, and the Forex Brewery was like this, you know, the big red Forexes there was like, yeah. At the time, I mean, Australia used to be like a monopoly per state, basically. So there used to be like in Queensland, you drank Forex, in New South Wales, you drank Tui's, and Victoria, you drank Melbourne Bitter or Victoria Bitter, but it's all different now. But it used to be that way. That's like the idea, you know, if you had a brewery, like if I could just have only our beer sold in Bristol, it'd be like utopia, wouldn't it? For me anyway. But
Yes.
maybe not for everyone, they'd be like, oh, geez. But, you know, that's kind of like a very simple way to look at it. So.
And it's totally appropriate that your happy place in Alchemy and Gold is doing what you're doing and loving it doing it. So now we're going to award you with a cake. And this is the final suffused with storytelling metaphor. So do you like cake, Alex?
Yeah, I like cake.
And if you had to choose a type of cake, what would it might be?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. Okay, that wasn't hard to decide. Now you get to put a cherry on your cake. And this is stuff like, now, what's a favourite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and pulled you towards your future?
So I have a few, you know, man's not a camel, that's one. But no, I think this is another joke one, like, pressure makes diamonds. That's a good one. So when all the chaos is on, just don't worry about it. Just keep going, because pressure does make diamonds. It takes, you know, it's very high pressure, and it might take a million years, but, you know, eventually we'll get there. So that sort of thing. But I think, you know, this isn't an inspirational quote, but I remember my very first job when I was a process engineer in the iron ore mine. I worked for a guy, he's from Northern Ireland. He used to work for chemical plants and everything, and he sort of said to me, just be good at something. So no matter what you end up doing, just be good at something, you know? And so if you're going to be a chef, you know, try and be the best chef you can be. If you're going to be a brewer, try and be the best brewer you can be. It's pretty much almost like that Japanese thing you're saying.
Back to the ikigai,
and, you know, now if I was going to stay a process engineer, you know, be an amazing process engineer, but specialize in something and do it. And that's kind of stuck with me a little bit, because I do kind of think, you know, everything we've done here is, you know, we haven't half done anything. Like part of the grounded name is, you know, well, the grounded name is, you know, someone that is sensible, knows that it's important. So for us, it was like all those little things that we do is all like intentional.
Yes.
It's not like, it's not optional. So when there's a lot of noise with other breweries making lager and all the rest of it, you know, at times you get worried because it's like just more competition. But actually, in fact, if you kind of look at it and go, well, we've got a very clear view of what we're doing, and it's a full-time commitment.
It's staying close to your own compass pointing true north. It's sometimes called your differentiating factor, the thing that sets you apart in all of our choices that we make.
Yeah, and there's the other thing I like is the guy I worked with once, he said, what would you do if you're the only one? So pretend you're the only one, what would you do? And actually, if we were the only ones, we would do this. So that hasn't changed. So there's all this noise out there, all this chaos and noise, and especially with all the social media and everything, and you can see, oh my God, what are they doing? What are they doing? Oh my God, did you see what they did? But actually, we're just doing us. So it's better to actually take a step back and go, you know what, we're doing us, and have that kind of confidence. It's like, sort of say, you get to a point in your life where you don't mind eating dinner alone, you know, especially if you travel a lot for work, you get more comfortable just sitting there having your dinner, whereas at first you feel really awkward about it. And I think it's getting that little bit of confidence in what you're doing to not have to worry about everyone else.
And I'm delighted for you, you've arrived at this sort of metaphorical plateau where you've stopped pushing to find it because you've found it and it's now growing in its own clearing, if you like, here at Lost and Grounded.
Yeah, you know, it's so, and in reality, it's actually brilliant, you know. You know, a few years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, it's not going right, it's not doing, you know. But actually, it's brilliant. It's nice to take a step back.
With the gift of hindsight, what notes, help or advice might you proffer to a younger version of you?
You know that saying they say about it's going to take 3 times longer, take 3 times more money? That's pretty bloody accurate. So, so we had to.
Of course, we changed it all. It's going to take 3 times longer and 3 times as much bloody money. That's a good sucker for us all.
That is true. I mean, this is more business. One of our shareholders said to me once, he said in the early days he'd been involved in another brewery in the finance side, and he said that business was undercapitalized and it didn't have enough money, and he said the best way to kind of put yourself to an early grave is be involved in that situation, and I definitely would agree with that. So, but you kind of got to learn these lessons, and provided your plan is not ridiculous, stick to your plan, and eventually trying to see it through, and that's what we've done here. I mean, yeah, it's been quite dicey at times, but we're still here to tell the tale.
All the best things are dicey at times, but we're still here to tell the tale.
Nothing comes easy, I guess.
Yes. So we're ramping up very shortly to talk about Shakespeare, to borrow from the 7 Ages of Man shortly, the speech, to talk about legacy. But just before we get there, this is the construct where I'm going to include introducing the idea of pod to give. So this is pass the golden baton, please. So the idea is I'm going to invite you, having experienced this from within, in order to keep the golden thread of the storytelling going, who would you most like to pass the metaphorical golden baton on to within your network, Alex?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and we do have some guys that do some film work for us that I'd probably like. So they're called Latent Pictures, and they are doing, actually going to be documenting the Friendly Festival we're having here on Saturday. So with the Sleaford Mods and other bands playing. And their whole mission is about how to give underrepresented people opportunities in the kind of film, video, production side of things, because as you know, especially in anything to do with creative art, creative fields or art is it's either about who you know, or it's about you have to work for free, or you have to do all these things. And their thing is about how to give people opportunities where they can actually get paid and actually get proper experience and actually start to make their own way in the industry. Then,
sure.
So a bit of a leg up. So I always say a couple of young guys. I feel like they're young guys. I don't know. I'm 50 now. Yeah, I suppose they're young.
It depends whether they think you're old or not.
Yeah, I guess.
Brewers are getting much older nowadays.
I saw a guy the other day, today was here, one of these from one of our wholesalers, and I hadn't seen him for a lot of years. I was like, geez, your hair's a lot more grey now. I was like, what happened? I was like, yeah, it's been about 8 years.
Getting wiser,
yeah.
Yes.
But I think I'd like to give those guys a shout, because I think they're doing something special, and they just started off out of their own steam, and I think it'd be great for them to kind of tell the story and about where they're coming from, and how they see they can sort of amplify their efforts throughout the industry, because there's amazing creative people in Bristol,
There are indeed, absolutely. And you said Leighton Pictures, is that right?
Yeah, yep.
Thank you, that's a lovely golden baton pass. And now, then, inspired by Shakespeare, all the world's a stage with all the better women really players, we're going to talk about legacy, finally. How, when all is said and done, Alex Troncoso, co-founder of Lost and Grounded here in Bristol, how would you most like to be remembered?
Yeah, well, this is a bit philosophical here. I was thinking about this earlier. I think in the end, it's you're not, people come and go all the time, and it's I think I'd just like to be known someone that's, a good person that has helped do good things, I think is the only, that's it really, because I think I could try and say, oh my God, I made the most amazing lager in the world, whatever, but, brands come and go as well. So one day that brand will just get fade.
Nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever. And I think just whoever I've worked with over time, just know that actually he's a good person that's done good things. And I think that's pretty simple. It's, don't need to get too complicated.
We're going to do a bit of an audience Q&A in a moment, so just have a think about if you'd like to ask Alex any questions based on what you've just heard. And I've got a bit of a feedback brick here. Does anybody have a question? And I'll throw the brick at you. It's very soft and very comfortable. And then if you'd like to, you can ask a question. So does anybody have any questions, please?
Everyone's charging at it. Just make one up. There we go.
Sir.
There we go.
Here is a feedback brick. So just hold the brick and it will pick your sound up. So what's your question, sir?
Yeah, a really interesting story, Alex. Thanks for sharing it. I've lived in Bristol for a number of years and seen a number of breweries sort of rise from the ground over the last 2 years particularly. I just wonder how you'd characterise your relationship with them. Do you regard them as competitors, or sort of friendly chums, or sort of how do you hold them in your head?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like we're all kind of existing, and it is challenging because there's only so much independent trade around Bristol. Because although there's lots of pubs around, if you're actually in the business, you know, like, oh, that's a Green King pub, that's a Youngest pub, that's a M&B pub, and there's actually the number of customers you can have if you don't want to work with the big pub groups. Like at the moment, we don't work with any big pub groups. Your kind of customer base starts shrinking like that. So we can overlap quite a bit, but I think the interesting thing is we're all kind of doing our own thing to an extent, especially us because we're mainly on the lager side of things. And it has been interesting to see like the different growth, you know, like, you know, we've obviously done what we've done and expanded a lot over the years. Wyvern True's just done a new brewery, you know, in the last couple of years. Bristol Beer Factory is just commissioning a new brewery. So there's a lot of growth out there. It's just a matter of us, yeah, kind of peacefully coexisting with each other, and then don't try and compete with each other too much. Actually, there's a whole bigger piece of the pie out there that we can work towards. I think it was kind of funny in the earlier days. I think it was pre-COVID. Like, it used to be like every single brewer in town, we all knew each other, and we'd always be down in King Street, and it'd always be 2 o'clock in the morning, and you end up in the beer emporium or something, you know. And it was like, yeah, quite kind of, it's like Wild West days back then. So it was,
This town night bag.
Yeah, pretty fun, but yeah, now we're all a little bit older, a little bit. Don't know if we're wiser, but we're older anyway.
And as I said at the beginning, it's a testament to the collaboration that here I am being offered by you Clearhead, which is a Bristol brewery non-alcoholic lager.
Yeah.
And that there's room for it because you're not doing that and it's not competing, which is
fantastic. And I mean with Bristol Beer Factory as well, we co-sponsor End of the Road Festival. Have last year, we got another 2 years to go, and like we supply the lager, they supply the pale ale. You know, it kind of just works nice.
Room for some more questions if you have any. Does anybody else have a question?
Everyone's dying to ask questions.
It's like an auction, you're twitching. Oh, yes, there's...
Yes, if no one asks any more, we'll have to pressure you to ask more. So.
It seems to me that pubs are really struggling at the moment. You know, sort of since COVID, sort of pubs are really finding it hard. As someone who's involved in the brewing industry, you know, what do you think about the future of pubs? Is it something that concerns you at all?
I'm not concerned about pubs as much. Part of me thinks like, geez, the young people aren't drinking anymore. It's like, that is changing as well. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and, you know, they're similar age to us. They were talking about, you know, they're out to 2 o'clock in the morning, got home, and then I think one of their daughters told them to be quiet. It's like it was the opposite way around. I was like, so she's not drinking anymore because she's seen you guys now. But no, it's kind of funny. But I mean, it is hard. I think, you know, are there a lot of pubs out there? There's a lot of pubs out there. Is there too many? Not sure. But what we find with our customer base, I mean, we pretty much deal with independent trades. We have beer in Waitrose, but we don't have beer in any, which is very small in the scheme of things, the supermarkets. We don't have beer in Sainsbury's, Tesco, anything like that. And that's kind of a deliberate thing. We actually want to be dealing with small customers. It takes longer and it takes more people because people like to buy beer from people, you know, and we're talking about trade customers. You have to go in, see the bar manager, then see the owner, then convince the owner, then it's quite drawn out. But what we find with our customers is places that have a really great reason for existing actually are doing like well. I think it's when you get in that, it's sort of like if you if you're going to be middle of the road, it's a great place to be run over. It's like you don't want to be middle of the road. It's like either decide, you know, you need to decide what you're going to be. It's like if you get stuck in that bit, you're just kind of stuffed. So we find the people that are doing well are actually doing like quite well, you know. And it's weird how quickly the price is normalized. I mean, when we first moved to the UK, it was like £4 a pint was the standard in London, even, you know, and it's like now I don't think anyone really bats an eyelid if it's £6.50 or whatever, you know. It's just kind of like normal, and it's almost frightening how quickly that has shifted in the last like couple of years from the cost of living and everything.
Another question from the back here.
Oh, geez. Oh, we got a heckler in the room. This is Sophie from our team, by the way.
How do you see Lost and Grounded growing in the next 5 to 10 years or so? Is it something to do with the brewery
you're
size?
looking for your next job. Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, I think like it's nice to grow. Like people ask me all the time, like, how come you need to grow? Like, how come you can't just stay where you are? But it's actually really difficult to do that. It's actually really very difficult to maintain a business that's just doing that. because you either you can maybe do that, but you kind of want to do that, or you're probably going to be doing that. So it is difficult. I think we could make a lot more beer. I think we could sell a lot more beer. I think we have something really unique here. I think it's like, my idea would be any single place that's serious about their beer they sell, whether that be a restaurant, a cafe, a bar, whatever, should have Keller Pils. It's like, if you want to have the most unique lager in the country, you have that one. If you don't, then, or if it's just about the price. And if it's just about the price, you're ending up in that middle of the road bracket, because if it's just about the price, there's other very cheap pub chains out there. I won't name them, but there's very cheap ones out there, and you're not going to be able to compete with that. So it's like, we kind of make the beer we make because it's a little bit hazy, it's unfiltered. Because my philosophy is all those big lager brewers out there, all the big global brands, they'll be far better at making that beer than we'll ever be. So why would we try and recreate that? Let's do our own thing. Let's make our own stamp on things, because we're not going to be able to compete with efficiency. We're not going to be able to compete with distribution. We're not going to be able to compete financially. All we can compete with is creativity, really. So
It sounds like it's an economy of scale attached to purpose and the imperative of the ikigai again.
that's the problem. It's like essentially water, right? So we're essentially selling water with a bit of booze in it.
Thank you for doing that. Lovely.
So
Time for maybe one more question, if you'd like to ask a final question. Oh, bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank
No need
you.
to hurry, though.
Thank you. Where do you get your hops from?
Oh, yeah. Okay. We get a lot of our hops from Germany, from Hallertau area, some from Tettnang. And actually, on the Keller Pils can, that's actually the hop fields of Tettnang, and that's like Constance there. And that's it was a visit I had to the hop fields in Germany where kind of my inspiration for Keller Pils came from. And I was there during the hop harvest and had this this unfiltered Pilsner, which is what Keller Pils is, and it just seemed like the most basic, just lemony, fresh, beautiful, simple beer. And that's when I kind of had this epiphany. I thought, yeah, not everything has to be complicated. So a lot from Germany, a little bit from US, but we mainly make lager, and we don't kind of rely too heavily on the faraway hops. More sustainable, I guess. It's closer.
May I ask, were you disappointed because you had some to sell? That's a very lovely question.
But the hop industry is very interesting because it's almost like they're not traded on any open market, right? So you can't just go into the financial section, look at the futures prices for hops. It's there's even the company we get most of our hops from, they have about 800 farmers in Germany that they're all buying from. That's all consolidated, and then it's only them knowing the supply and demand of everything. So it is kind of interesting, very controlled, is in like by those few firms. Like you got a couple of the firms each have control about a third of the world's hops. So and they've been around for a long time. Any
more for any more? My facilitative instinct is we might have done with questions now. That's lovely. So I'll put my feedback brick down, and thank you for your gorgeous questions. So where can we find out all about, for those particularly watching on the old interweb, where can we find out all about Lost and Grounded online on the World Wide Web?
So you go to our website, lostandgrounded.co.uk. We're on Instagram as well, at Lost and Grounded Brewers. Probably like one of the longest Instagram names ever. And also on LinkedIn, And,
so I've noticed you don't have an ampersand for the and grounded. You've gone lost and grounded.
Yeah, that's deliberate as well. We were kind of just going through that the other day, and we say we always spell out and.
Yes.
And
it's the care and intention of just a bit more detail. I
yeah. So.
Oh, and I forgot to ask you about your logo, which is a hippo in flight.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, so we really like animals. So Annie kind of had these different ideas about having a globe, and then with this brilliant illustrator named Alexia Tucker, she used to live in Bristol, and we just found her on a website called Drawn in Bristol, and it had all these independent illustrators on it. So to this day, we've never used like an agency or anything to do any of this. And for the original core beers that have the illustrations, Lex just came over to our house, and her and Annie sat in the kitchen, and they just talked about what we feel like, and one of the things that came out of it was this kind of flying hippo carrying the world, and we thought two of our key values to be humble and inclusive, and we figure like hippo is not the rock star of the animal kingdom. It's like apparently kills a lot of people and stuff, but don't worry about that.
It kills more than crocodiles, actually.
But hippos, very self-assured. Actually, a hippo will just stand in the middle of the crocodiles and doesn't actually care. The crocodile's leaving it alone. And it's kind of like yeah, you want this kind of humble animal, because the most important thing, right, is actually doing a good job, to me. And I think diversity in teams is really good, but the worst thing is if you end up with a team with all the same people, and it's like, me, I don't care what kind of music you like, I don't care, what food you like, anything. What's really cool about working with someone is someone that does a great job. And the best way to lose a friend is to work with someone you know.
Yeah.
Best way to make a new friend is work with someone you don't know. So it's like
Nice philosophy, yes.
Yeah, so I love that. And then but you got to be a bit of a dreamer. So our hippo is like, if you work hard enough, you can carry the world.
So it's a hippo in flight carrying the world. There is a corporate construct about teams that are dysfunctional where people defer to the hippo, which is the highest paid person's opinion. But that's the sort of darker side of it.
Yeah, we don't have that here.
We're not talking about that. Wonderful. So, as this has been your moment in the sunshine in the Good Listening To show, Stories of Distinction and Genius, is there anything else you'd like to say, Alex Troncoso?
No, just I'm glad someone came, eh? This is good.
You did. Small but beautiful and perfectly formed.
Yeah, the other day we're thinking, we have this festival on the weekend, we've been so focused on it, and then we remember this is coming up, we were like, wow.
Oh, Christ, Chris Grimes is coming.
And then the other day we were like, has anyone actually got a ticket or not? And it was like, okay, yeah, all right, we don't worry about that.
So here you are, you're a small, wonderfully welcome and
yeah, no, I'd just like to say, thanks for coming along and everyone just listening to the bit of the story. And you can hear my anecdotes anytime. Just come back. Leave your wallet on the bar. I'll tell you all the stories again.
And I really enjoyed your riffing on liking the construct of how a band functions. And you're talking about being in the middle of the road and getting run over. There is that joke about, have you heard about a band called the Cat's Eyes? They're a middle of the road band.
Hey. And there was even a band in the 70s called Middle of the Road. It's kind of like, how more middle of the road you can get than that? It's like
exactly.
Insane.
So a couple of announcements from me about the show. If you'd like to have a conversation with me about guesting in the show, the website for the show is thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. The next live show in Bristol is where I'm delighted to be having Rob Brydon coming to the Redgrave Theatre on Saturday the 5th of July. That's Rob Brydon coming into the show as well. You've passed the golden baton. Thank you very much indeed to Leighton Pictures. Also, you mentioned your love of your father earlier on in the show. There is a new series strand to the show, which I'm very excited about, which is called LegacyLifeReflections.com, which is to use this storytelling construct to record the story of somebody near, dear, or close to us for posterity, without any morbid intention, but lest we forget before it's too late. So have a look at LegacyLifeReflections.com. And indeed, my own father is a bit of a sort of mascot for it, because with the gift of hindsight, I interviewed my dad in the halcyon days of his 80s before he slipped into a crater of declining health. He died last August, but now that I still have that recording, it's obviously incredibly precious, because what we always miss the most when that precious special someone is gone is what they sounded like. So if you feel that that could be helpful to you, look at LegacyLifeReflections.com and also thegoodlisteningtoshow.com. I've been Chris Grimes, but most importantly, could we give a huge round of applause for Lost and Grounded co-founder Alex Troncoso?
Thanks.
And the piss up in a brewery has come to an end, but the bar is still open. Follow that man to the bar. Thank you very much. Good night.
You've been listening to the Good Listening To show with me, Chris Grimes. If you'd like to be in the show too, or indeed gift an episode to capture the story of someone else with me as your host, then you can find out how care of the series strands at the goodlisteningtoshow.com website. And one of these series strands is called Best of Bristol, Bristol Voices, helping to celebrate and amplify all the best of all the creative endeavours, the movers, the makers, the shakers and the mavericks, the influencers and the personal heroes, all from my hometown of Bristol in the United Kingdom. Best of Bristol, Bristol Voices episodes can also be filmed and recorded live in front of an audience of the creative entity's choice, as well as streaming to all the usual social media channels as we do so. So yes, get in touch if you'd like to find out more about Best of Bristol, Bristol Voices. Tune in next week for more stories from the clearing, and don't forget to subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts.